Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to another installment of Eau De Vie with Mike G, the show of life, the show of Black Mirror, Pears, Brandy, Calvados, Oregon, and so much more with today's guest, Miss Jeanine Racht of Clear Creek Distillery out of Oregon. They make some fine brandies, a fine whiskey, and so many other Eau De Vies. And what better place to talk about Eau De Vies than on Eau De Vie? It's a great chat with Jeanine, very, very intelligent, cerebral, career focused, and it's great to just dive into her head because she doesn't have a social media presence beyond some great pictures on Instagram. So there's not a lot to know about Jeanine unless you catch her in a room or catch her in one of her classes. But I think you guys are going to enjoy diving in to the mind of Jeanine. So without further ado, I hope you guys enjoy this great chat with Jeanine Racht of Clear Creek Distillery.
Yeah, see, I've never had Facebook. It started in and around college where you had to have a college email.
Yeah.
I had one, but and funny enough, my major was speech communication and media
relations. Yeah.
I really wanted to work for the BBC.
Oh,
and
geez.
That mixed with a little bit of paranoia on my end. I really like talking face-to-face with people. And believe it or not, I am very much an introvert. For my job, I've taught myself to be an extrovert, but I need to recharge, and it just was beyond me to think of the ability of being bothered or, when I was trying to recharge, just the idea of social media. I'm also a huge Philip K. Dick fan.
Okay.
Your Android Stream of Electric Sheep, Ubik, and so, my love of sci-fi and the looking at the possibility of what this could turn into scared me. And I thought, hopefully in a few years they won't want to poke and prod and test me because I, come across people that haven't had Facebook before.
Yeah.
But Instagram, it felt less intrusive, and I'm very visual. I love pictures, and I like to communicate that way because people can't learn too much about me.
That's a great point. Only context clues and a seldom reflection in a mirror.
Right.
Which you can see.
It's true, yeah. And I think half the time all the bullshit that people put on social media isn't real anyway. It's like you're having so much fun on vacation. How come you're posting every moment? So yeah, I'm just kind of crazy. So
well, let's talk about BBC and sci-fi.
Sure.
Because I'm really, really still upset. Every episode of Black Mirror that I watch.
I love that show.
It's incredible, right? Like, there's a place here, and this is a long way to go to an analogy, but it's a place here called Trudy's. It's a Mexican restaurant, okay? They make something called the Mexican martini. It's a very, very strong culmination of, olive juice, tequila, all this shit that we could only do in Texas. It's not particularly good, but they limit you to 2.
Got it.
So you walk out of there with 2, you're fucked up.
Wow.
Right? So that's how strong this is.
Tequila's the only spirit?
Yeah, they'll do a Cuban one.
Like a 3-ounce pour or something?
It's a massive pour. Yeah, massive pour. Well, I was thinking today, I was like, sometimes it's good it was probably good that they cut you off. All right, Black Mirror, from a psychological perspective, I can't handle more than 2 episodes. How do you feel about the show?
It is a little bit mentally exhausting because it's not just a show that you turn off and go to bed.
No,
your brain keeps thinking, and much in the way that Pandora always leads to the Beatles, at least I've noticed.
Yeah.
I think that most sci-fi nowadays, it all leads back to Philip K. Dick
and
Asimov. And so when I watch the show, sometimes I'm like, oh, there's a little bit of Do Android Stream of Electric Sheep here. Nothing, no one's invented the wheel. There's nothing that's fresh, but to have it visual. The first episode, I'm going to be honest, I think it took me 3 weeks to watch the next episode.
I still haven't watched it because someone told me what it was about. I'm like, I don't really need to see that now. It kind of spoiled the pig fucking for me.
I totally wish someone would have told me about the pig fucking because then I could have not watched it as well. But then you get the idea behind it. I'm a little bit of a wimp. We weren't allowed to really watch a lot of TV growing up, so I hate horror movies
Do you
because
really?
I have very vivid dreams, and I will incorporate them in my dreams. So I will watch a commercial for a horror movie and dream about it for 3 months.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
No, but I know that there are a lot of people that have this aversion to horror movies. I'm not exactly sure why. For me, there's some conscious thing where I'm going to face my fears head on. Mm-hmm. So if I hear something rustle in the woods, my wife gets really mad. She's like, why are you going towards the noise? Like,
right.
That's just how it goes. I want to confront it. It usually ends up being a raccoon or something. But,
right.
you know. But yeah, then we'll intersect it one more time. So technology, saying too much, people not really doing anything even though they're taking pictures of it. That second episode, the American Idol one. Mm-hmm. How did you feel that kind of dealt with technology and our fixation on it?
So that wasn't the press up or down. It was
That's the one where it's like you go on American Idol and they basically tell you what your life's going to be worth. Everybody on the treadmills.
Oh, gosh. And you get points, right. And if you die, you can give your points up.
That's right, yeah.
To someone else. I think that there's a saying, is it better to live to work or work to live?
Yeah.
And I'm a little bit of a workaholic, but I also love my job. So sometimes, it doesn't often feel like work. Mm-hmm. But it is frightening to think that metaphorically we're watching this technological approach to what exists now. Yeah. I didn't feel like that was something in the future, even though it was kind of metaphorically in the future. I felt that, between money and jobs and, people trying to spend time with their kids when they're home and, they get nannies and babysitters and then weekends they're just trying to clean their house. I mean, it's just, that's not everyone's life. I mean, clearly there are women that work.
Of course, yeah.
Not to bring up that sort of subject.
But that's an interesting underlying piece though too. Yeah. The sexism there. Yeah. It's like we don't need another woman singer.
Yeah.
Dude, I mean it's heartbreaking. So
it is heartbreaking.
To wrap it, two's enough. I don't know that I can do two. I think one's probably enough.
Yeah, and I think that maybe it would be best if sometimes you want to relax, but if all movies and or shows, I kind of see the Black Mirror shows because each are produced separately. They are like little movies. Yeah. But if you think about if there was work to challenge the viewer with most of our shows, we wouldn't be spending 10,000 hours in front of the TV. Yeah. It would be so exhausting.
That's a great point. Like intentionally making you chew on it.
Right.
You have to take space.
Yeah.
You can't mass consume that stuff. I think that is a metaphor for the BBC and much of the TV that goes on there, Taboo and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. Well, so you mentioned that you weren't really allowed to watch a lot of TV as you grew up. Are you from Oregon originally?
I was born in South San Francisco.
Oh, okay.
And lived there for a few years and moved out to the valley, this little city called Atwater.
Oh.
It used to be known kind of like the butt crack of California. It's in the San Joaquin Valley. There was an old Air Force base. But moved to Portland when I was 13.
Wow.
So went to school, went to Portland State there.
Was the family that caused the move? Did you?
Yeah, my dad was working in energy as an electrical engineer, and they just did a bunch of layoffs in California, and he found a job in Portland. So it was kind of completely up in the air. You know, we're either moving to Texas, to Oregon, and I was mortified. I thought that I was moving to farm country. I wasn't going to have any friends. And what was really funny is when we moved to Portland, I realized how much I was living in farm and dairy country.
Yeah.
In Atwater, there was so much ag. Our neighbor, one of my good friends, had ostriches. And
that's so cool.
We had horses next door and had a ranch-style house and some property. But, yeah.
So what kind of things, 13 is, I've moved around kind of around that same period. Oddly enough, the same exact choice for us. Yeah. Either Portland or Texas.
Oh, funny.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Well, we ended up in Houston.
Yeah.
But that's been all right. I've been all right with it,
Have you seen Sliding Doors, Gwyneth Paltrow?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's totally right. Yeah. I guess I'm the brunette or you the brunette. One of us has to be the blonde. I don't really want to be the blonde.
I can be the blonde.
Okay. Well, that's good. Thank you for
taking one for the team.
Yeah. So you talk about media studies, you talk about communications. So what kinds of things were you doing for kicks as a kid? Like before you started moving to Portland, are you talking sports? Are we talking reading? I mean, obviously some reading, it sounds like.
Right. So I had an interesting upbringing. I lovingly call it the cult. I was pretty much raised in a very strict religion. So no birthdays, no holidays, sundown on Friday till sundown on Saturday, really restrictive in terms of food.
Wow.
No
What's one of those restrictions on food?
Nothing with a split hoof, so no pork, no giraffe.
Yeah.
And then no crustaceans of the sea, and so just overall no seafood. And,
that sounds like, very, very orthodox
Judaism.
But
I left when I was 17, and, of course my parents thought that it was just like the black sheep stage, but I was like, no, I think this is pretty crazy.
You had enough of it?
I've had more church than anyone should have in their entire lives, so... But it was fun. I did have, my parents are great. I had a great upbringing in terms of they were great parents. It was just teachers don't know what to do with kids in the middle of nowhere. There wasn't even anyone Jewish at our school. So they would put me outside of the classroom and I would read a book. So if they were singing Christmas songs or whatever, I couldn't actually be around it.
Oh my God.
Religiously, not mentally.
Right.
So I ended up just flying through books. And my dad gave me the Stanford reading list when I was like, I don't remember how old, and so I was like on a mission to try and read as many books as I possibly could.
Wow.
So
very academically focused, or cerebrally focused, maybe.
Right, yeah. I had to live in my own brain for quite a while.
Yeah, well, that's what we do when we move, right? Yeah. The only people we can count on is ourselves, because there's no social there's no social group yet.
Sure.
Did you, so 17 is pretty young, but it seems like a very, very prosperous age for many. Did you have that wanderlust for world cultures, to travel, to try new things? I imagine it was pretty pinned up at that point.
Yeah, I mean, one of the really interesting aspects of the religion was you were required at certain periods of time to leave your household. So we actually did travel all over to Europe. So it's really funny to live restrictively, but then be exposed to things. And we are a creature of our surroundings.
Yeah.
And so I distinctly remember, two of my earliest culinary experiences outside. Both my grandmothers and my mom, great cooks. I learned to cook from them. But I remember my first soft-boiled egg in London.
Wow.
And it was served on a little pedestal, and you crack it. And my parents hated runny yolks. And the first time that I had a beautiful, buttery runny yolk, I was like, this is what an egg is supposed to taste like.
Yeah.
And then oxtail soup.
Oh,
and
man,
I remember it so distinctly. And like from then, I just decided that travel equaled food and food equaled travel. And now that I travel and eat a lot of food, I just realized that everyone in some way likes food, and we speak through our food.
Yeah.
And you can kind of figure out what's culturally important based on how people treat food, what goes in their mouth, and really how long they spend at the dinner table.
That is exactly, if there was any theme to life for me right now, is that food and drinks are the absence of technology, right? Because you have to, it's like the last places you have to go. You sit your ass down in a place, you find an Uber, you drive, but you have to go, you have to attend in person.
Yep.
There's nothing that can supplement drinking pear brandy with you or pear, Eau De Vie, like there's nothing that can do that. So the pursuit of higher ed and going to Portland State, was that something that was going to happen from when you were a young kid, to do the college thing?
Yeah, my dad went to Berkeley
and
got his master's at San Francisco State, and so it was very apparent that it wasn't an option for me. And it wasn't even a 2-year, it was a 4-year. My dad said it was really important. And his theme was always, if you want to be a garbage delivery person, be a garbage delivery person, but you're going for 4 years. Which is fun because he didn't pay for it. But yeah, I think it's also an important lesson, student loans, and it's really great when you finally are able to pay them off.
Right. Autonomy is good. Scheduling is even better.
Right.
When should I turn my assignment in? Should I turn it? Should I go into class? How many classes can I miss and still actually squeak on by? Right? There's a great lesson to learn there.
Absolutely. I wish someone would have really explained the university experience to me, because I wasn't a big fan of middle school or high school. My last 2 years of high school, I had half days. I had gotten so many credits, and it's like, that shouldn't happen.
Yeah.
You should challenge a student more. And
keep them, you got them under the roof, right? Keep throwing things at them.
Yeah. And I was on the volleyball team, so like you're required to have, a certain amount of class credits or something. So I technically could have just taken like 1 or 2 classes.
Oh man.
So anyway, I think that I just had a really great university experience. I enjoyed it a lot.
Did that help socially? Do you feel like you kind of became maybe self-proclaimed introvert, but maybe it helped you communicate externally better with people, connect with people, like in conversations? Yeah,
absolutely. I think that especially at being in the middle of a bustling, city, I think it's really cool to not have it be isolated. in terms of the university experience and living and
Right.
being around everything. But from the moment that we had orientation and I was reading all of the descriptions of all the majors, I chose one and never strayed. I actually took so many speech and linguistics classes that I double majored in
No kidding.
speech communication.
Do
and
you speak any other languages?
A little of quite a few.
Oh, good.
A little French, little Spanish, little Russian.
Yeah.
It's really frustrating. I wish that, considering my cultural diversity, it would have been nice. I think a lot of people, when they move to the States, they just want to acclimate and not speak their language. But, yeah.
It's one of those things I really regret. We take foreign languages in high school, but it's not really functional.
Right.
You know what I mean? There's not a lot of conversations, and you're just going to French restaurants or filling out tests and stuff. So I think we're at a disadvantage in that sense. So when you talk about, because I'm doing the math here, right? So you got Portland State, 4-year program, I presume. I don't know if you pursued your master's. I don't think so, right?
No, I've taken a few master's courses, but I stopped.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm good for now. And I go back.
Yeah, this is actually on my dime. So I think I'm all right.
Yeah.
I think I'm doing okay. But you start with Clear Creek in 2006. So how long had you been out of school by the time you started working with them?
It was my first, I will say, real people job.
That's
my first.
incredible.
Yeah, and I just never left.
How did that situation come to be that you met the people that eventually ended up hiring you there?
So I was doing an internship at the time to get credits, and then also just to keep myself busy. I wasn't busy enough at the Children's Museum in the development department. So I learned a lot about like charitable work and nonprofit work, and also learned that I probably never want to work in a nonprofit. Not that I won't donate to them.
That's a great lesson, though.
It's so stressful. There's a lot of behind the scenes work that I didn't realize went on, but they basically really, really wanted to hire me, and they didn't have any funding for any staff, so they took it upon their personal mission. One of my good friends now, Nicole, who I reported to, she came to me and she said, I know that you wanted to work with the BBC, and I know you want to work, in media or writing or, just anything where I can video kill the radio star type of situation. I just wanted to be like old school Sherlock Holmes or something. So she brought me a job description, and it was posted on the Reed College wall. And Reed College is like this, at least in our area, it's known as being a very academic college, but with a history of a lot of, like in the 70s, acid. And people are called Reedies.
Oh, interesting.
And so Steve McCarthy, our founder, a Reedie, posted it on the Reed wall, and Nicole had worked with him a lot because he had been in the Portland area for a long time and does a lot of charitable giving. And she said, this description, so they're looking for someone at Clear Creek Distillery. I know Steve McCarthy very well. Read this. And so one of the things that popped out at me, it included you must be able to carry 50 pounds. You must be comfortable driving a stick shift dock high delivery truck, which it was not dock high, nor was it ever. We got in a lot of trouble for that because people were like, it needs to be dock high so we can get the forklift on.
Yeah.
And it seemed very different from, jobs I was applying to. So I applied and they hired me. So one of the really cool things about Clear Creek is everyone has their little hats, their little jobs, but, especially back then, everyone pitched in, dug fur picking and labeling and, whatever you could do to help out. And so at the time they were looking for someone to kind of rework. They never really had a tasting room per se, but Steve McCarthy is one of the people who worked on the legislation years ago. He wanted to be like a small winery.
Yeah.
He wanted people to come visit his distillery, try it, maybe buy it if they like it. So my official title was, running the tasting room. So it took it, into an actual kind of a real tasting room with, a little store and a system and a tour schedule. But yeah, it was great because I got to learn the ins and outs of how we make every single product.
Yeah, for 10 years now.
11 years.
Sorry, 11 years.
Well, this July. I'll be celebrating my 11th
That's
year.
incredible. Yeah. I mean, to think about, gosh, it's like the whole school that you've been introed to out of like former college, quote unquote, right? It's the school of distilling. You're working with like Sub Pop Records, right? You're working with like Discord. You're working with the guys who kind of were at the forefront of taking something out of the ground in American distilling,
Yeah.
putting it in a stone from it. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
that's got to be kind of a cool gig.
It's a really cool gig. And once I realized how cool it was, I just made sure they would never want to get rid of me ever. I just tried to find out anything I could. I read every book I possibly could, asked every question I possibly could, paid attention, was willing to work every single weekend, work late hours.
Is that what kind of, so you had studies in mezcal, you had studies in wine. So is that where all that kind of stems from, is be the best that you can be in terms of what you know and what you learn?
Which is tough when, you're paying out of pocket. But the reason why I started doing the Court of Masters Psalms is I work with a lot of people that are heavily wine focused, or maybe that's their only education in terms of distributorships. And especially 11 years ago, I would be meeting with the GM or the sommelier, not the bar manager. I mean, there's been a huge shift clearly because cocktails, restaurants were able to realize that they're getting, really nice margins, and cocktails are becoming a thing.
Yeah.
So you need someone to be ordering the spirits and not the wine and the beer and the spirits. So I needed to learn to communicate with them, and I needed to be able to earn their respect because it's not given easily. I also, work in an industry where there's not a lot of ladies.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So I thought that one of the best ways was to educate myself. So I learned about wine, and then I did the Mescalier program, and I'm kind of a geek, so I just...
No, but I just think you like to read. You like to learn. I think you... So I'm a white guy. I'm a guy, and I'm white, right? So walking into a room, I have a lot less challenges than other people might, right? And I got a beard. I kind of look like a hipster, so it's even easier fucking in Austin.
You look very Portland. I guess very Austin, but yeah. Same thing.
Great. Yeah, no.
Just joking.
But for you, is it a conscious thing thinking that I am a woman in this industry that's male dominated? I need to outperform and over deliver on all these things because you reflect the potential and what people maybe aren't tapping into in terms of hiring.
Absolutely. Every single day I have thoughts that go through my mind, or checks and balances, or whatever it is that, other people don't necessarily have to really think of. And actually a really good example, I was having a chat with a friend the other day. It's very, very, in terms of sales, it's very common to have business cards.
Yes, right.
For example. So, I was having a discussion with someone about business cards, and they wanted my opinion on, when do you use them? When do you not use them? I said, well, for me, I have always felt that there's kind of a natural, I would like your contact information moment.
Right.
But as a woman walking into a bar, handing a man or a woman your phone number, that's, and unfortunately sometimes you learn a lesson, and then you just change the way you do it. So in terms of what I do, I don't just hand everyone a business card. I mean, that's a really simple, basic example.
No, but that's actually a great... I never even thought
here's
about
my address and my name and how to spell it and my phone number. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I would never have to think about that. Yeah. And it's kind of a shame because I pride myself on empathy. So it's the only way any of us can get anywhere is by understanding what hardships other people have been through, or at least the kinds of things they have to approach.
Right.
So talking 11 years then, it's profoundly a different environment for women in the hospitality and brand industry, would you say?
Yeah. I think that there are more women getting involved, which is really great, especially in higher positions. But there still is this dichotomous... The word brand ambassadorship, I feel, has been so kind of bastardized because you do have people that are just hired to, look pretty or wear a certain outfit. And then you have people that take it seriously, and they do want to be taken seriously instead of, how they look or whatever it is. It is changing, and it's changing for the better. But I think that, we have a long way to go.
Yeah. Well, a long way to go. But we all do. We're in a weird spot.
Absolutely.
Lots of us.
Right Everyone, now. Everyone's there's a long way to go in a lot of ways.
It's a funk, Yeah. It always kind of feels, and the gray weather today does not help this funk.
Yeah.
It's been lurking around for a couple of days now.
It's crazy. It was, and And of course, for me, I look outside and I see clouds. I'm like, oh, it'll be a little cool. Ugh.
No, it's worse here.
Yeah.
So misleading.
So humid. Although my allergies have been much better here
than
really? Every other place I've traveled this year. Yeah, I actually got diagnosed with allergy-induced asthma.
Oh my gosh. Do you have an inhaler?
A week and a half ago. So I'm trying to not have one because it's steroids and all that stuff.
Right.
Yeah, I did have to get medication.
Oh my gosh.
I just couldn't figure out what was happening. I just couldn't. I never, knock on wood, get sick. As much as I travel, I should. But I think it's just because I expose myself to so many germs.
It's a very dirty world.
Yeah, like someone sneezes on a plane, I just inhale really hard. I'm just joking.
Or someone coughs. I wait. Like, what's the blast radius? When can I hold my breath and walk past it? Got to keep healthy. Yeah. You know.
Yeah, it's important.
Well, let's talk about Clear Creek. Amazing stuff, right? There's so many. We could talk about the whiskey, which is lovely, has this campfire essence to it. One of the first I ever tasted American whiskeys that tasted like that. But I want to talk about Brandy.
Sure.
Brandy is a huge part of American history, peach brandy, apple brandy, but yet it feels like it's lost on people's minds. Consumers don't really understand cognac's brandy. They don't understand Armagnac is brandy. So for you, having this great collection of brandies, which we'll dive into in a moment, but just the general warmth for brandy in the market, do you feel that's changing? You think there's a big education gap?
I think the answer is twofold. I think education is definitely important, and that's most of my job. Sometimes people ask what I do. Well, I do national sales, but I make relationships with people, and I educate.
Yeah.
People's eyes glaze over sometimes when you start talking about Eau De Vie and grappa.
Yeah.
So I do think it's changing because I get a lot less blank stares when I walk into places. Like maybe they've heard of Clear Creek. And I mean, in terms of press, we were really lucky over the last 32 years to get some really nice press, which affects us like advertising. But I mean, okay. And then so the other answer is there's some money coming into the game now. There are some bigger companies that have, started and sold other companies that are like, okay, we're going to make brandy a thing.
That's right. I think we both know who we're talking about. Yeah.
It's going to be a thing.
Right.
And maybe other people aren't doing anything with it. So, I mean, my opinion is the seasonality of brandy has been a little bit restrictive in terms of you just can't whip up, a batch of raspberry Eau De Vie in the middle of winter, where you can make vodka and grain spirits, and or if you're using like juice, like liquid. In terms of using fresh fruit, which Eau De Vie, in order to capture it properly, it's very important to use fresh, whole fruit.
Right.
But it's interesting. I think that I'm sorry that I say so many sayings. I'm realizing
this
is coming out of my mouth. So,
I'm getting wisdom.
A rising tide raises all ships.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I think I'm a very positive person. I think that it's only going to bring a name, to brandy. And then when people are able to sit down and smell and taste instead of just the one brandy in front of them, I think it's really cool that there are options now.
Absolutely.
And, not every place has a brandy distillery. It is the most expensive thing for the most part to make. But when you look at something like mezcal, and I cannot even wrap my brain about it. Is so big, people don't even flinch. $130 a bottle.
Yeah.
So I think that with education, the more and more people realize that these types of brandies, it's very much like a winery. You wouldn't walk into a winery and they're like, we're sold out of our 2012 Pinot Noir. No one in their right mind would say, well, why? Can't you whip up a batch? There's this, even if someone doesn't know about wine, they understand, I see vineyards, I see grapes. That's what the wine's made out of.
Right.
When those grapes are gone and the wine is gone, it's not growing.
I don't think people, you're right, because there are those brands, right, that have it all the time. And cognac, again, even though it is very seasonal in France, but it's like they just kind of think, actually had someone from France say, that's the problem with you guys, is you don't realize in the States that everything has a season. You just get anything you want. You get mangoes year round, bananas at any day of the week.
And tomatoes, those horrible mealy tomatoes. And nothing is better, in my opinion, in Oregon than our Hood River strawberry season and our tomato season. Both of them are a week or two, and I eat more tomatoes than It's like, yeah, why not use beets during the winter?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I'm so appreciative when I go into a place and there's that thought put into it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one of the reasons why our agricultural industry is just, it's such a mess. It's ridiculous when you've trained customers to expect things year round. There's a point where there's just no expectation anymore. You walk into a grocery store and you better find tomatoes and avocados.
Yeah, that's what I want.
Limes and lemons. And
we're very impetuous, like they're just compulsive people. You know what I mean?
Well,
that's not our fault necessarily. If you give us everything, we're going to want more and everything.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I mean, the Industrial Revolution, and you have, we have all these periods of time in we're quite a young country. We have all these prohibition. It stopped things. So you have all these things that stopped or started. We want everything French. We don't want anything domestic. Yeah. I don't care if we're growing beautiful blackberries down the street. I want the mûr from France. So that is starting, to shift clearly, the whole farm to table, farm to glass approach.
I think it is changing too.
Yeah.
So you guys have this amazing portfolio of stuff. Do you think I use the word sleeper because that was the term in the 80s, like in movies? And
do you play fantasy football?
No, never. But we'd go. But my mom loved movies. You talked about Babette's Feast, which maybe we can talk about. But she's always renting foreign movies. They're like, oh, this one's a sleeper. Mm-hmm. So with the amazing bottles you guys have, the amazing marks, what do you think's that sleeper in your bag that when people taste it, like, holy shit, this is blowing my mind, and I had no idea it even existed? We do make a lot of things, and it's hard to choose, although the pear brandy is still what we make the most of, what we sell the most of. What's the proof on this guy?
80 proof, so 40%. It takes 20 pounds of pears to make a bottle. It's the only ingredient outside of water we bring or add to bring down the proof. I think it's fantastic. It's clearly I'm biased, but it's the best pear brandy I've ever had. Mm-hmm. There are a few European brandies that I've had, a few domestic brandies, fantastic. But I think one of the reasons why it's extra special, all our fruit grows within about an hour and a half drive from the distillery, so we're really hyper local. Need it to be fresh, need it to be local, need to be able to drive to that farm.
Absolutely.
Get your eyes on the fruit. But the farmers in the Hood River Valley grow the most beautiful Bartlett pears.
God, it's so good.
It's just up to us to screw it up. So we just, take fruit, we crush it with, pulverize it. We actually don't use the juice. We just crush everything, skin and all.
So ferment on bagasse, like you would with agave fiber.
Right. And, sometimes people look at it and they're like, oh, it's vodka. It's like, no, this is not flavored vodka. Vodka is made differently for a different purpose, meant to be neutral. And then, with all our flavored vodkas now, that's getting a little out of hand.
Right.
No, it's made completely out of pears, distilled once, and I think it's just a really great expression of how a distillate, unaged, really, it's not rectified, it's not refiltered, it's the pure expression of the fruit, and we want you to be able to, close your eyes and smell and taste a pear.
Oh, it takes me inside of a pear. That's the best part about this.
It's crazy.
Because sometimes I just get the acidity, or I just get the bitterness, or I just get the crisp starchiness. This has all of those elements, and that's why it's exciting, because I couldn't drink when I was a kid, but I sure as hell ate a lot of pears.
Right.
And it takes you back to that moment. It's instantly familiar. Yeah. Not a lot of things can do that, especially spirits.
Right. I think it's also a fun activity in how our taste buds and our smell, our olfactory works. It doesn't happen very often, but I will have people that will, smell and taste it. And what they say is, I'm not getting the pear.
What?
I'm not getting the pear.
Come on.
At first, outside of just thinking these people are fucking nuts, I started to realize that's not what they're saying, unless they have a cold. What they're saying is, a pear to me is sweet. A pear to me is sweet, and all I recognize a pear for being is sweet. And they're not, really getting all those other notes. But if they really took a moment to smell and taste and just try and take that sweet aspect out, it's like a deconstructed pear. Yeah. It very much smells like a pear, but without that one component, it is lost.
That's so strange, because pears to me were never overly sweet. It was balanced.
Yeah.
With mealiness, which I like that kind of starchy flavor, with just a subtle punch of sweetness, but nothing that red sweet to me ever.
Right. Well, the bricks of sugar in a Bartlett pear clock in at about 12. And so when you're looking at like wine grapes, you're looking at 20, 21.
Yeah, it's
so they actually are pretty low in the fruits of of the world in terms of bricks of sugar, and we only ferment to about 5% alcohol. But
Wow.
one of the things we really pride ourselves on is not using the mealy pears. There is like a graininess to a Bartlett pear, but over years and years and years of buying 40,000 pounds of pears at a time, we actually stick the pears next to the stills so they ripen very evenly.
Oh, wow.
So all of our fruits we get just once, except for the pears and apples, where we're getting a few batches during the fall. Their season's a little longer. And I didn't know this about a Bartlett pear before I worked at Clear Creek, but they don't benefit from ripening on the tree.
Oh, no kidding.
So they're actually picked green, hard, underripe, which is usually how you buy them in the grocery store. So if you're buying them for home, you put half in your fridge, half on your counter, and they'll ripen at different periods of time. We can't do that at Clear Creek. So we actually stick them next to the steamy stills, which during the fall, we're already working through the cherries and the blue plums and the Mirabelle plums. And it's warm and it's, very humid. And it actually ripens the pears evenly so that when we crush them, they're perfect.
You think about a good use of energy too, right? It's just expelled heat and humidity that helps do something else. You would have to buy a humidifier. You have to buy this other equipment that's brilliant.
Yeah, and waste energy. And
totally. You're kind of like recapturing it.
Yeah, and everything that trickles out of the still first, the heads, we actually clean with.
Yeah, that's amazing. So the apple brandies as well, that's becoming a bigger category with people like Copper and Kings, for instance.
Right.
I know that California is making a big play in the larger grape brandies and some apple brandies and things. But so how do you feel like the brandies as well, the apple brandy, captures that essence of the Hood River Valley too?
I think that, so all of our apples are from the Yakima Valley, over the river, so super close. Once again, Steve wasn't reinventing the wheel. He looked at what fruit was growing around him and, golden, delicious apples, not the sexiest apple in the bunch. But turns out it's a great brandy-making apple. His family orchards, they were growing pears that were Bartlett pears and then golden, delicious apples. So, why not?
Amazing, yeah.
So it was a really great use for that apple, great, acid component, and bricks of sugar and water and pectin, because we don't add sugar or water to any of our fermentations. Right. Which is tough when you're dealing with skin and whole fruit solids. So I think that apple brandy, you won't often find unaged apple brandy because the nature of it and the bitterness of the skin, it's pretty hot coming off the still. So we actually have two expressions of apple brandy. The younger one is aged 2 years in old cognac barrels, and our older is our version of Calvados, although we would never dare call it that, aged for 8 years.
Amazing.
And what's interesting is we don't add caramel coloring, and which means sometimes the younger one's darker than the older one. Yeah. But I think it's a really great way to talk about this industry in terms of thinking about a spirit visually. If someone says, oh, shouldn't that be darker? Right. It's like, well, let's welcome that conversation. We're not adding anything. So we liken our younger one to be a little bit more like Applejack, or what Applejack used to be before it was fortified with a lot of grain spirit. And at this point, most Applejack has such heavy American oak components, you might as well just buy bourbon.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So I do think that the apple brandy is pretty restrained, and the apple still shines through in both. And then, of course, our traditional grape brandy, our version of Armagnac, Pinot Noir, Pinot
Single
Meunier,
distillation.
Muscat.
That's killer. It's exciting. And you came in, you're actually in town. Now, one, it sounds like you've been on a massive tour of America.
Yeah, I thought New York back-to-back with Texas would be a grand old plan. So,
how many weeks you been on the road now?
About a week and a half.
Jeez. Yeah. You said, like 12 engagements or something like that? You said you had a bunch of...
Usually my trips aren't that long. This one, I just thought, it'd be fun to make it longer.
Yeah.
But yeah, I came into town to do some seminars and, visit some folks and just kind of putter around Austin. It's a fun place to be.
You come... How often are you in Texas?
A few times a year. I'll be in Houston end of June.
Oh, cool.
But I try and get to Austin at least 2 or 3 times a year.
A lot of inquiring minds, a lot of people really interested in this category. We're, if it's like that in Portland, it's going to be that way here in Austin,
And I love it. It's still not lost on me. It's still refreshing when someone does ask a geeky question and I can, answer it. And they're kind of like, well, shit, I was trying to stump you. And it's like, no, let's have this conversation.
Yeah. No, I can tell that you talk about bricks, you talk about fermentation. You've been there. You smelt it. You've got almost 11 years of experience with it.
And I'm still learning every day. Sure. It's not that I've ever not known, but I'm the kind of person that, I don't know, so I will go find that out.
That's right. I think that's great. Well, so two questions left for you. This has been, I would consider, a very definitive chapter of your career, the one that probably introduced you to many things and became an amalgam of your interest in cultures and interests in food, interest in literature. It feels like the perfect profession, to be honest, with your interest in all of those things. Right. Now, not to say you would ever leave Clear Creek, right? But someone that is ambitious and someone that wants to keep learning, what do you see as maybe the next move for you?
I think it's still, I know I've been at Clear Creek 11 years, but it still feels so young in terms of the changes in the industry. There's just so much happening that I definitely cannot imagine. But in terms of, I would love to do more traveling. Yeah. I would love to learn more about what's going on, because I think that the more we travel and talk to people, I think the better we become, because you were saying before that compassion aspect, that putting yourself in someone else's shoes. And there is so much going on, and I think that it just makes us better people. So outside of, I don't know, starting my own restaurant, just joking. Sounds like the worst thing. I would never ever do that. I like cooking too much. So
more of this but larger.
more of this but larger. It's just for me a t-shirt.
That's good. But then, like if I were like, what are you eating to win? Like what's the point here? Yeah. Well, I thought I like that because it leaves things quite open, and I'm sure you'll keep traveling. There's no doubt. Yeah. So much to learn around each corner, Yep. So the last question, and I have no idea which way you'll go with this. Let's say you are sipping whichever of these wonderful brandies or Eau De Vies you want to at your favorite bar in the world. And you could sit there and have a conversation with someone living or deceased. Who would you love to just sit, sip, and have a conversation with?
This is actually reminding me of an interview that I had in college. So it's a really tough question because, of course, since then I've had, close people that have passed. Yeah. So part of me wants to bring that back, but I love art. I love food. I think at the time I said Pablo Picasso. I just find him so warped, and it would ruin it to find out why he did what he did on paint. Who would I bring back? Oh, here we go. Apicius.
Apicius.
So Apicius, the first documented cookbook.
Okay.
So it's in Latin. It's been translated a few times. I've been trying to work my way through it. I have 4 different versions. And I said earlier, I love cooking, but I also love that kind of weird stuff. And it's a little bit like Sappho. How Sappho is so well loved, but nothing of hers was finished because half of it was lost and just to project so much. So Apicius, the way that he wrote, or it's assumed it's a he. So I should say the assumption is Apicius is a he. The pieces, the fragments that he writes are ingredients in no particular order. There aren't very many cooking times. Wow. There are some in a few, but it's just this language of writing down what he's cooking in dishes, but maybe ensuring that no one would ever want to get rid of him.
Oh, wow.
And kill him. It's really cool.
That's strange, yeah.
I've been working my way through. I'd love to ask a bunch of questions, including, there are a few ingredients that can't be researched or they don't exist or whatever it is. But,
or different name, right? They've evolved. And you can't.
Or they've evolved, yeah. I'm always the first one when I see an herb that I've never seen. I'm like, yep, that's coming home with me. So yeah, I think
the TSA is really starting to worry, right?
Actually there was one time I came back and there was a thin layer of this Hungarian cayenne pepper over all of my luggage. And I was trying to figure out why they would open it. But I had this really fresh thyme. I think they just thought it was marijuana or whatever. But yeah, it was all over my luggage.
That's what you get from being a culinary gourmand. Yes. Is that good? That's a positive way to call it.
That's positive, yeah.
Well, this pear brandy, it's like the golden goose of the terroir and how pears should taste. I mean, I really just can't speak highly enough about it. And its reputation preceded itself, It's been around. We've been talking about it for so long. And to get to share this with you as a direct conduit to the distillery, a purveyor of knowledge and all of this stuff, it's just really, really great. And I hope you've enjoyed your Austin stay here the past few days.
It's always a blast. I really love coming here. It's fun. And the timing for this worked out
so good.
Perfectly. It's not the same over the phone.
No, it's not.
It's not the same, but it's good to do it in person.
It is, because now we can riff, right? It's all about the riffing.
All about the riff.
And the dumb jokes coming from me and seeing how you put over that shit, right? So anyway, it's been lovely getting to chat with you, and there'll be lots to talk about till the cocktail. And it sounds like when you get more information, and you said that they just kind of started posting that dinner.
Sure.
Let me know. I'd love to share it. Love to see you there too.
Absolutely. You'll have to come to the dinner.
It'd be my absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, there we have it. Jeanine Racht of Clear Creek Distillery, making a wide array of beautiful Eau De Vies, brandies, and even a rustic malt whiskey. It's great work out of Oregon, and it's great to see that Jeanine has been with Clear Creek for over 10 years, defining this chapter of her career professionally and academically and cerebrally is Clear Creek, being in this industry, getting to travel around. And I can't imagine how amazing this Babette's Feast-inspired dinner will be during Tales of the Cocktail. I'll post some details here in the coming weeks, and I hope to see you guys out there at Tales of the Cocktail and chat with even more of you. And Jeanine, hopefully we can sip some more of this amazing pear brandy. So thanks everybody for listening to Eau De Vie with Mike G. No matter how often you think you should update your Cody app, because much like other things on the internet, security is a priority. Or if you're thinking, man, I'm tired of getting up early in the morning and watching Fox News, please keep them.